All right, guys, welcome to the Blitz studio. We have co-heads of Esports, Whalen, Rozelle, Jared Kennedy. Thanks for coming in.
Great to be here.
Yeah, nice to be here.
So you guys are in here to talk about a pretty big announcement that Riot's got out today. Can you guys get us up to speed on what's the news today?
Sure. You want to take it?
Go for it.
Okay, so we're announcing our 10 partners that we're going to be going forward in the NA LCS with. We're super excited about this. We can go through who the teams are, but before we do that, this is a really exciting moment for the league because we've been talking about building towards sustainability and giving teams the opportunity to invest for the long term and for sponsors to come and invest for the long term, and also to give pros more of a voice. There's a bunch of things we've been talking about thematically, and we think that the step that we're taking, that we're kind of finalizing today and announcing, goes a long way to achieving a lot of those goals.
Yeah, and just for the people who might not have actually followed us throughout this process, is that, you know, sort of the LCS up until this point, when we launched it in 2013 up through last year, has been a relegation promotion system, right? So teams who, you know, didn't compete super well were at risk of getting knocked out of the league, and so you know, what essentially we're doing is we've selected the 10 teams who will be sort of like the teams who will be permanently in the LCS and be joining us towards building a brighter future. And we are very excited to both welcome in some new teams, as well as, you know, of course, welcome back some perennial favorites and some teams who we think will actually continue to do very well in the LCS. And I think that diversity of ownership will really, I think, level up the entire league, hopefully creating something better for fans both next year but 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. We really think that this will set us up for a really bright future.
So who are our new teams?
So we've got 4 new teams. We've got the Golden Guardians, we've got Clutch Gaming.
Then we have 100 Thieves and OpTic Gaming, Greenwall. And so, like, those are the 4 new teams. But then also some of the teams have taken this opportunity to bring on sort of new investments. So CLG, of course, has been a team that we've all known and loved. If you're a CLG fan, you might have loved and hated over the course of time. But you know, they've you know, brought in Madison Square Garden Company, who has you know, strong background in traditional sports as well. So we have this blend of, you know, teams who have been in the league, like TSM, Cloud9, Team Liquid, FlyQuest, you know, Echo Fox, you know, mix with these teams that are going to come in, and you know, we'll see how they do, but we do think it'll be a great blend.
So with these new brands, we have to say goodbye to some old organizations, and we kind of have to address, however much you guys can talk about it, the elephant in the room. What surprised the community most was Immortals. This was a team that, to fans, were checking a lot of positive boxes. They were competitively successful, had a lot of content creation, some new big hires. Can you guys give us any insight into why there can sometimes be a discrepancy between how fans see a team and how Riot sees them as potential partners?
Sure, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, we think Immortals are a great organization, and we wish them well going forward. We can't speak to specifics around the decision that we made, but speaking broadly, we had many more applications from quality organizations than we had spots. Yeah. And when we were looking to make the new league with our new partners, we were trying to find a balance between a few things. One is, as we've mentioned previously, we wanted organizations with particular capabilities and experience around either brand building, fan engagement, business building, winning within our scene. And it's true that some of the organizations that are no longer part of the NA LCS had some of those boxes checked, but it was looking at the totality of the applications, looking at this sort of combination of the various pieces, almost like how do we Voltron up into the league that we have today. And it was really tough. It was, and we had lots of debates about it. But we feel like we got to the right balance of endemics and non-endemics, and also capabilities. And we're excited to get started.
And I think it's fair to say it's understandable why some fans were surprised, because a lot of fans do focus on, you know, the particular thing that's visible to them. So, you know, record, you know, how well did they do? Are they winning? Like, did they field a good roster? You know, like maybe their social media or something. And those are things we absolutely considered, but we're also trying to consider a lot of things that might be invisible to fans, or they might not get as much insight to, like you know, what kind of infrastructure and organization are they building behind the scenes? You know, what is their philosophy and approach to partnership, and how well will they work with not just their own players, but with other teams, with Riot, et cetera. And those are just a couple examples. I think that you know, there's been a lot of back and forth, whether it's on Reddit or on other social media platforms, about the various things that we consider. But think it's safe to say that, while Immortals and a bunch of other teams check some of those boxes, we really felt like the 10 teams that we picked like brings that right and like diverse group, and they all are spiky in certain ways, and we think that the totality of those ownership groups will actually lead to a really healthy league.
Mm-hmm. There was some speculation going around because Phoenix1 and Immortals will both be fielding Los Angeles Overwatch teams. Do you guys want to address that at all? Is the idea that they'll run LA teams anyway clashing with Riot's idea of an ideal partner?
So, I mean, I think you just have to look at the fact that we have 2 teams in the league, OpTic and Cloud9, that have Overwatch teams, and like we consider everything, and that is a very small portion of what we consider, because we really want to focus not on other leagues but on the LCS. Yep. Like, how will these owners come in, and how well will their teams do in 2018? How well will their teams do 5 years from now, et cetera? And I think it's safe to say that we care far more about their plans for League of Legends than any other league, Overwatch included.
I will also say that I noticed in the announcement, FlyQuest, you guys put a lot of focus on how they're kind of revamping. They're going to come in with a new logo, more branding efforts, new management. What gives you guys confidence that FlyQuest can revamp, and why not apply that philosophy to other teams? Like, why not take Envy, give them a new logo and management? Why doesn't that work for them?
So again, it goes back to we had really hard choices to make here, and we met with the teams, and across the board we had really strong applications, really strong interviews from more teams than we had slots for. When talking about FlyQuest, when talking to that organization, Wes Eden's, like, their commitment to identifying what they've done right, what they've done wrong, what they need to change, we found it to be particularly resonant and aligned with where we wanted to go. And so for that reason, we chose to double down on working with them.
Let's just talk about Envy for a second. They actually have a huge rivalry with OpTic in other esports, and TSM versus CLG has been very valuable for the leagues. And did you guys ever consider the value of adding another rivalry into the league?
I mean, certainly that's something that wasn't lost to us, and I know that was when both those teams were announced for Overwatch as well. That was the big thing that they were talking about. Oh, like that rivalry's going.
Classico.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we certainly considered it, but at the end of the day, it's just the big picture that we're looking at, and we hope to see more natural rivalries develop. I'm sure that for those NBA fans, like it'll be interesting to see 100 Thieves play against the Guardians. But I do think that we'll see those rivalries develop more, because these teams now are going to have more presence. We're not going to see as much churn out in the bottom, and so those will be opportunities for sort of hopefully some new TSM CLG rivalries to exist.
That's the old, and we have the new. 3 of our 4 new teams are coming from NBA ownership. Why is there so much basketball coming into the league? Is it something about these owners that you guys find attractive, or do NBA owners have increased interest in esports?
So I think it's a few things. I think yes, for one, NBA owners have been particularly interested in esports. I think we saw interest from a lot of different professional sports organizations, but the NBA, I think was probably one of the earliest organizations, both at the league level and also at the ownership level, to express an interest. I think we started having conversations with Wes Edens over 2 years ago. Rick Fox,
the NBA
also,
itself.
The NBA itself. Adam Silver came to MSG for our semi.
No, it was 2015.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it was NA Summer Finals. NA Summer Finals in 2015. Yeah. Rise. So they've been active in our particular scene for some time, and so I think when this opportunity came about, they were uniquely positioned and had already thought through why they found it attractive, what they thought they could bring to the table. I think the NBA is a relatively forward-thinking league, and so a lot of what they're doing probably translates pretty well, but mostly it was deep commitment to LoL esports, an understanding of the ecosystem. In the example of the Houston Rockets and Clutch Gaming, they were already building towards this before they knew if they were going to have a chance to be in. They hired a head of esports. They were building out their analytics. They were getting smart so they could come in and be as successful as possible on day one. And that was appealing to us, whether or not they were an NBA franchise or not. So I think in some respects it's a coincidence, but in others it's not, because of just the general thinking of the NBA.
Also, these teams are non-endemic. What during the application process gives you guys the confidence that these teams understand the community, that they can market to them properly?
So, I mean, first and foremost, I think that their approach and their humility, they understand that they don't get it right off the bat, right? I think that right there would be a deal breaker for us if any organization came and said, well, we've built this thing in this community, we can then replicate in this community with the same bag of tricks. And so I think they were all very aware that they have a lot of catching up to do. We like to, we're excited that these new organizations are going to come in and sort of not just level up the league, but also teach the sort of the endemic teams that have, the TSMs and the Cloud9s that have stuck around. That said, I think they're going to have a lot to learn as well. And so that's the first thing, is if they didn't know that they had a lot of learning to do, we probably wouldn't be in this situation. But I think secondly, we've seen, though, this track record of appealing to different groups, and just like their strategy, and it differs for each team, but generally speaking, they all came in with a fairly good strategy on how to do outreach, how to create content, how to position themselves, how to position their players, how to create stars. And so all these things give us confidence that there's a foundational layer of excellence and a track record of excellence, but then there's the understanding that they're going to work with existing teams out there to level themselves up, work with us to level up, work with other esports orgs out in the beyond League of Legends to level up. And so with that philosophy, we think that there's a shot. And look, we understand that some of them will stumble along the way, right? No one's perfect out the gate, but we do think that if we're trying to think beyond 2018, that these new organizations bring far more benefits than the potential stumbles they might have.
What are the methods for learning? Obviously, they have, you said, a long way to go.
Sure.
They know that they don't know everything. What are going to be their tactics invading the community and understanding it?
I think hiring is the big one. Like they're not just hiring from sort of the traditional pool that they might be hiring for their basketball or sports organizations, but they'll be hiring folks from esports with a background in esports, but also from other avenues of gaming. And so that right there will at least give them the leg up to begin having a conversation with the community. And then I think that if they're smart, they'll use that initial leverage to work through their players, because a lot of these players are going to be the same players competing, maybe just on a different team. And I think that will actually help fans sort of bridge over to the new organizations, because what we've seen in esports is that fandom for a team begins with the player, begins with them streaming or them making big plays or hanging out on social media. So think that the traditional route of build stars and hope that sort of follows to your team brand will probably get it done.
What kind of fail-safes do we have? Let's say medium to worst case possibility, they're not getting it, they're not branding well, or maybe they're not very competitive. Do you guys have a system where you'll find them? Do you have a system whereby you can remove teams?
So I think first and foremost, we wanted to let 10 teams into the league that have the mentality of partnership. So I don't think anyone's going to not get it and then not listen to either the other teams or us. We do think that that's a real key of learning and sort of venturing into the unknown future of esports together. That said, we did structure it because honestly, we heard from the fans the concerns around lack of competitiveness. At least on the Rift, if a team doesn't get it in competition, if they consistently underperform, then they're actually subject to potentially losing their spot in the long run. If it's, I think, something like 5/8 splits, if they finish in the bottom two, like that could absolutely lead to them losing their right to be in the league. Also, we've actually structured it so that not just on a sort of how you finish it within the standings perspective, but how many fans do you have? All of those actually lead to a slightly higher, slightly lower share of the league revenue pool. So there's a financial incentive to get it as well. So I think hopefully through a combination of incentives and support, we think that these teams can get there. But we do have fail-safes just in case this thing doesn't work. Because at the end of the day, we're doing this so that the NA LCS is awesome and so that people want to watch it. And if there's a team not getting it, no one, either us or the other 9 teams in the league, want that team in there.
Yep. And we tried our best to find teams that were just intrinsically motivated and aligned with what we're trying to do. Yeah. And so the hope is that it never even comes to any of those fail-safes.
Yeah, talking to these guys, they want to win. They want a great fan. They want a great fan base.
They have track records.
Yeah, they're very competitive, and so we think that it'll be fun.
Another hope for all of this is that the fanship market spreads out a little bit. The team has said in the past they want more than just TSM fans. How do you guys see fans moving into unfamiliar teams, and do you fear that bringing in 4 new teams will cause people to cluster upward towards their familiar old favorites?
Yeah, so look, I think it's a risk. I mean, TSM is an incredible brand with an incredible fan base, and it's going to be a challenge, for,
it's already kind of clustered.
Yeah,
it's
pretty clustered. I mean, Cloud9's got a great fan base. I mean, but TSM definitely number one in our league. Our partners that we've selected that are coming in are up to that challenge, and we think now that there's more permanence and you can invest for the longer term. There's hope and opportunities for them to sort of win fans over, and I think that we expect that to happen. Whalen mentioned earlier that fans sometimes follow, sometimes follow pros, and so they're going to get a chance. I think as rosters shift over time, they're going to get a chance to have fans take a look at them and see what they can do, and fans are going to know that they can commit their to a team and not worry about that team not being around. And so the hope is that over the medium term, as things stabilize and teams get wins both on and off the Rift in terms of how they're winning on the Rift, but also how they're engaging with fans, the stories that they're telling, that there's going to be an opportunity here for organizations to make a real run at the top fan teams like TSM.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little about Clutch City Gaming. They in particular have an analytics-based approach. Can you talk a little bit about that?
And so we don't want to dive in any special sauce. We don't want to give up any secrets. But that's something that was obviously very compelling. Just looking at that organization, I mean, their involvement in analytics and data and just being really smart around sports goes well beyond esports. I mean, their involvement in like the Slack, the Sloan analytics conference, and they actually already have a scouting organization dedicated to League of Legends esports. This is prior to us even greenlighting it. So they're really all in, and our hope is that this is a different approach that a team is taking, which is trying to understand from a data perspective what does good League of Legends looks like. I mean, we know that when Faker's playing, that looks like good League of Legends. He looks pretty good, right? But that said, how do you what are the signals for someone who could potentially become the next great star? And if there's so many players and there's so much data, that's one of the beautiful things about esports. How do you then parse through all that data, come up with an algorithm to determine this player's on the right trajectory, or they have all the signals that they're going to be a star, and then go find that player, scout that player, develop that player? It really takes a long time, which is why we're excited about this partnership, is that teams will have the ability to take a multi-year approach to developing talent. It won't just be about fighting over the stars, but it'll be about finding the next star so that you can grow them in your organization via the academy teams and all the other sort of methods we're putting into place.
And if Clutch is successful in their approach, we think it's going to raise the bar for the league, and others are going to react to it, right? So when we were building that complete picture of who we wanted our partners to be, we knew that people were going to bring different strengths and different weaknesses, but in total, our hope is that they level each other up and they compete and also collaborate. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the strengths of the other teams we have in both 100 Thieves and OpTic, kind of this large FPS fandom coming to league.
I'm super excited for OpTic. That's an organization that we learned about through this process. A few people on the team are like deep FPS fans, and they're like, OpTic's coming, and so they're geeking out. I think that they've proven that they can create, similar to TSM, a rabid fan base, like a support that shows up no matter what, any place, anytime, and they may
be our second LCS chant.
They may be, and so they may be the second LCS chant that's heard when no LCS team is playing. But we're very excited for them to see how well they can take their experience in shooters and move over to MOBAs and League of Legends. And similarly, we actually, when meeting with 100 Thieves, meeting with Nadeshot, we were very impressed with just their approach, the authenticity, understanding how to market a brand, create, leverage streaming, how to tell stories, all these things. So we do think that those two are quite interrelated, and we think that both of them will obviously taking different approaches, and they're coming from different places, but they share that similar thread.
Mm-hmm. And then we have Golden Guardians, the strength of Dub Nation coming in.
Yeah. So the Golden Guardians, Golden State Warriors, I think their success in many respects speaks for itself. They're a highly sophisticated sports organization that has proven their ability to perform at the highest levels, not only on the court where they've got a crazy good team, but also Whalen's a fan, but also off the court in terms of how they think about sponsorships. If you look at what they're doing with their new facility that they're building in San Francisco. Very forward-thinking. Joe Lacob, a builder of many businesses, is a venture capitalist. That entire team is very, very capable. And when they came in and talked about what they wanted to do and how they saw League of Legends being a part of that journey, we got really excited. And we think that they're going to, like we were talking about Clutch and like we were talking about the things that OpTic brings to the table, we think they're going to come in and help level up the league overall. And that's going to be great for the sport.
Yeah, I think that they approached basketball and they took a different tact and a different sort of process into examining the game and try to sort of break it in some ways. And we hope that they're going to sort of take that sort of alt thinking and bring that to League of Legends as well.
How they run their organizations, it's very forward thinking.
Yep.
The other half of this narrative is obviously money. With each of these entrances, we're getting 10, give or take, $1 million, which obviously is capital for you guys and the teams to beefing themselves up as you guys start building the franchise. But in the long term, what are fans going to see different? How does capital eventually translate into a better fan experience?
So, I mean, I think it's not necessarily right to focus so much on money. Like that matters. So first off, like it's not like we hate money. We think the NA LCS needs to be super successful financially, because at the end of the day, that flows to pros. That causes teams to invest more. It enables us to do more things, which is a virtuous cycle that causes everyone to have a better product and hopefully more fans watch. That said, we're actually much more excited about the revenue sharing aspect of it, because it's about incentives. We do think that up until now, there have been some teams that have been pretty darn successful in sort of making a business in the league that we had, irrespective of promotion relegation or not. But now we're sort of all in it together, right? If the league makes another dollar on its media deal, then everyone wins. And so we're incentivized to work together and actually like come up with, whether it's jointly going out and getting a sponsor, or coming up with new programs for fans or youth outreach. There's a million different things that we haven't thought about that require us to work with teams and work with pros to get this done. And so we think that we've set up the right structure to incentivize everyone to work together instead of competing against each other, which actually was kind of the system that we were in before, where teams were actually competing against other teams and they're fighting over like, a set amount of pie, if you will. And they're just like, okay, we're just really good, we're going to take all of it. And we now hope that by working together, we'll actually grow the pie and then share it amongst everyone. And so we actually think that's the right structure, hopefully leading to more money, which can actually flow to, again, teams, pros, and make a better league for fans.
Yeah. And some specifics around how that could manifest itself once the money does arrive and continues to flow. So we've talked about facilities. We've talked about nutritionists, specialists, supporting pros. And we think all of those things will lead to longer pro careers, hopefully, and also hopefully higher competitive play, right? Because you can focus more, there's more focus on wellness. You can focus more on your profession. Things are more sustainable from a pro lifestyle perspective, and all of that stuff matters. So the hope is that as the league grows and becomes more successful, we're able to invest in sort of the infrastructure that looks like some of the best professional sports organizations around the world, and that leads to healthier, happier, longer performing pros, and hopefully the NA LCS competing at the highest levels on the world stage for years to come.
Ultimately, the long-term goal for all of this is increasing viewership. Right now, most of the viewership are players. How saturated is that market right now, and where does it go next? Do we start marketing to non-players, or do we work under the presumption that the player base is going to grow a lot more?
So it's actually not that saturated. I mean, there are the awareness of the LCS is pretty saturated. People know if you're playing in a region, you know that like, hey, if I'm in NA, if I play League of Legends, I know there's NA LCS. That generally speaking is accurate, but to say that if I play in NA, I watch LCS, that's actually, there's a lot of people who don't do that yet. And so for a variety of reasons, and we do think that it's a combination of, is the broadcast and the overall experience appealing? Are there friends watching? How can we get like more them watching together? Lots of avenues that I think we need to explore there. But I do think the focus should be on players or people who have at least played League of Legends. I mean, our belief is that the game is super fun to watch, but that's coming from people who play a lot of League of Legends.
If you don't get the nuance of it, it's harder. It's harder to enjoy.
You sort of have to ask yourself, like, if someone who's never played League before watches, Bjergsen versus Jensen, can they appreciate that? Can they appreciate like the subtle movements, the little dodges that Faker does all the time because he can't get hit with ghost skill shots? Like all those things, can they appreciate it? And so we think that making sure that the sport is targeted at them is the most important thing, because what we've seen actually, just little hints of it, is that those people will bring in their friends, and they'll be the ones that take the time to explain,
hey, this is
hey,
awesome.
here's why this guy is really, really good, or here's why, this matchup is fun, or like here's the history of these two teams. And so if we were to sort of alter the way we either broadcasted or marketed it, it could come across as we're just going to someone who's never really watched League before or played League before. And I think that would actually be a big turnoff to a huge percentage of the audience.
Because we don't want to make decisions that service people who aren't in our audience. We want to basically really invest in our core players and fans, and we trust that they will help us radiate outwards.
Yeah, exactly.
For the people who aren't quite aware of the scope, what is the sort of saturation of esports viewership in the player base right now, roughly? How much growth potential do you think there is there right now?
I would say a lot. I don't think we have a specific number, but in our studies, we think there's a lot of opportunity to, even with hardcore players. I was just literally at an Apple store, and the guy was Diamond who was helping me, and I was like, "Oh, did you watch Worlds?" And he's like, "Oh, I didn't really watch it." I was like, "What? Like, what do you mean, why?"
Bro.
Yeah, so like I think that there are people who are hardcore who like maybe are aware, but maybe don't have a team that they follow, and so there's and that's on us, and that's on our league to give those players and those kind of casual fans a reason to tune in more, to engage more, to follow the stories,
to care.
And, to care about the individuals. And that's part of what this partnership opportunity is about, is getting the right group of people partnering with us and working on those narratives and that engagement together.
Now we have the permanent partners set. What's next? Do we look at salary caps? Do we look at drafting systems? Maybe not those tools specifically, but what do we add on to this system to improve it in the future?
I think both of those are really interesting. Interestingly, they both require collective bargaining, which is something that we don't have yet in the league. That's not something we're necessarily against. We're starting with the Players Association and giving players the agency to sort of create their own voice and have that voice heard. And we'll work closely with them to chart the path together. But we aspire for the NA LCS to be a premier league in the world, period, across sports. And so if you look at the characteristics of successful sports, those are some, and there are others. But ultimately, what we want to do is create systems and processes and structures that support the mission. And the mission is to continue building the league as a great fan experience. And we think that, having a draft could be super cool, right? Because you get to see, who's coming in, and like some leagues have made it into like a real piece of entertainment.
Who's the first draft
pick?
Yeah,
who's the first draft pick? And then you look back and say, oh, what was that draft class like, and how are they doing?
You get Steph Curry moments.
Yeah, exactly. But that requires some things to happen before we can go in that direction. But we're very open to that. Some people have asked about geolocation. That's something that we're not planning on doing right now because we're not sure if it's right for our league and what we're trying to achieve, but it's not something that we're opposed to for any particular reason. We're always going to be evaluating what makes the most sense for the experience we're trying to create, and then work with our partners to sort of execute it, hopefully at a super high level.
Yeah. Speaking on the Players Association, we haven't heard about much of it publicly for a while. Is there more going on behind the scenes than we are seeing on the surface?
Yeah, absolutely. So you may have heard they hired they elected their leader, Hal Biagas, who's got great experience in other sports leagues, helping with players associations, even created one. And they're probably going to ramp up more once the season gets started. But they are fully empowered and funded, and we really want them, the players, to drive this. And so we're not attempting to be overly prescriptive about how they run it, and we look for that independent voice to emerge. And I think as a part of this process, once we get the NA LCS up and running in 2018, you're going to start to see more activity from that organization, which we're really excited about.
Yeah, we've intentionally really tried to step back because this is the players' thing. Like we've set it up so it's theirs, not ours. And so while we love to give you updates, like we actually don't know everything because this is their association. So
we don't go to those meetings.
Yeah, we go just to ask them questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Like BO1s.
Exactly.
Looking back at this whole experience, what's a moment or something that has surprised you, an expectation you had that got shattered?
I think first and foremost, this has been a lengthy process, and I think the amount that our team has learned from all the applicants has been, I think, in some ways surprising. Just from very narrow legal things that we've learned over the course of time to actually some of the ideas that both the teams that ended up getting in and some of the teams that were just were just applying had for the league has been really cool to see what happens when they're really sophisticated organizations looking at the NA LCS going, this is what it could be, dreaming big with us, having some ideas, some great, some crazy, but at the end of the day, that's kind of how you come up with some pretty cool ideas. And I think that our teams learned a bunch from this experience, and I think that it'll be great because this is just, again, one league around the world, and I don't think franchising is necessarily coming to all leagues, but I do think that it's an important level up of League of Legends esports, like our capability to be league operators, and so I think that that'll make us better as well.
I would just add to that it was really encouraging to see how many people, organizations, et cetera, believed in the vision and wanted to be a part of it. And that's a testament to all the players who have come through the league, all the teams who have operated in the league, everyone who's been on the operations side or the marketing side and doing the work to get it to this point. And we're just excited to have folks who are ready to kind of help us take it to the next level.
We've talked a lot about the pains of this process, the challenges of this process, and obviously the community feels that as well. What are we going to say when we look back at this in a year or 5 years about why this process was worth it?
Well, hopefully, don't know, but hopefully in 5 years, we'll look back and see that this process laid the foundation for what the NA LCS was able to grow and become, right? And hopefully you'll see things where you'll have a thriving players organization with successful pros who are aspirational figures for a new generation that are coming in to play the game, and we'll have a process either through a draft or other means like evolve scouting grounds into academy leagues, say academy teams to get them into the league, and there'll be rabid fans of all the teams who will be dedicated and following those actions both on and off the Rift. It will be economically sustainable, so you'll have investments happening and also being returned, so people can feel more comfortable investing even more to help create even more incredible experiences. And ultimately, all that leads to a sport that rewards fans for their investment and commitment to us, going all the way to the sport, going all the way back to the start. And I think if that happens, this decision and these partners will have been a big part of it.
2 years ago, a Riot Pls published wherein you guys talked about long-term vision, and in it you said you want to see League of Legends follow people for generations, similar to basketball or soccer. What will be the metric that you guys see where you can say that you have achieved that?
I think we like to talk about leaving a mark and leaving an impact. So I think the very direct way of measuring something is if you do stop playing League of Legends, do you still watch? Are you still a fan? That's our hope. That's our belief, is that you don't have to actively play League of Legends to enjoy watching League of Legends esports. I think both are cool, but at the same time, if we can create a sports league that is worthy of your time, even if you don't play the game, that's awesome. But at the end of the day, even if you stop becoming a fan and you drift off, and even if the league ends up, only lasting 10, 20 years instead of generations, we hope that, if you were with us when you watched Worlds, or you went to an NA LCS, show, or saw a crazy play or had an epic moment with a friend, that moment lives with you. It's like, I think that, we're all gamers, so we know that there are a few games and a few moments that you still vividly remember. Mm-hmm. So we hope that we can create a league that has the sort of impact that sort of follows you down that path, and through, even once you've long stopped engaging. And so that's kind of our hope. If we can do that, then I think that we've created something powerful and given it our best shot.
And we appreciate the community's patience as we went through this process. We know it was a long one, but hopefully it's worth the wait, and that we demonstrate that as a league once we get started in January. Yeah.
For more league interviews and analysis, subscribe to our channel. You can also find stats, discussions, and more on our website and mobile app at blitzesports.com.